Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mathilde. I'm the Digital Marketing Analyst here at Amity. Thank you for joining us for the first webinar of the season. We're super excited to be with our founder and CEO, Philp. Today's topic is how to build an early warning system for customer success. Paul, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Mathilde.
Before we do get started, I have a couple of housekeeping notes to share with everyone. We will be on Twitter as usual, so use the hashtag CSWebinar and tag us at GetAmity and at Philp, and we'd love to engage with you. We always have a Q&A at the end of the session, so we do have some time put aside to answer your questions, but feel free to send them our way during the presentation as well, and we'd love to answer them as the presentation goes if it makes sense. And we are recording this session, and we will be sending the recording and the deck to all of the attendees on Friday this week. So yeah, keep an eye on your inbox and message me if you don't see anything show up in there, but it should be in there by Friday. Thanks, everyone. And Paul, I'm going to hand things over to you now.
Thanks, Mathilde. Thanks for setting this up. And thanks, everyone, for coming out today. I appreciate you sharing your time with us, and please, if you have any questions along the way, let us know. And just to let you know, we just switched our webinar software, so this is our first time using Zoom for a webinar. I think we practiced enough, but I've had enough experience using new software to know that we may trip over ourselves once or twice, so please allow us a couple of trips our first time out. And you'll notice that I changed the title from the one advertised just to be a little more current event driven. And so today's webinar is building an early warning system, what we can learn from Irma. And I was very attracted to this topic because about 20 years ago, I was driving from Toronto to Key West for a scuba diving vacation in the Florida Keys. And just as I hit the northern border of Florida, they started issuing hurricane warnings. And so I was an active participant in the early warning system. And that let me get into a nice hotel that took good care of me for the next 3 days when most of the lower part of Florida didn't have any power. So I appreciate early warning systems for hurricanes. Okay, so we're gonna start by looking at one early warning system for the Irma hurricane that I found online. So this was an early warning system that somebody put up just I think just before Irma. So I guess the idea here is when the winds pick up and those bottles break, it's time to get out of Dodge as fast as you can. So I think perhaps this isn't the best early warning system possible. So let's take a look at a couple of the things that are missing here that would be relevant to an early warning system for a hurricane, as well as an early warning system for a customer success and SaaS business. Okay, so the first thing that looks missing is that it doesn't look like a timely early warning system. I was headed to Key West, and I got my first warning when I hit Jacksonville. So I still had about 14 hours of driving to do, so that gave me some time to plan and react. This one looks like it's going to give you about 15 seconds. You're probably dead by the time this goes off anyways. So an early warning system has to be timely in that you can take action, but it's not so early that that you just learn to ignore it. Okay. And it's not particularly specific. I remember, it was interesting comparing Irma to the storm Harvey the week before in Houston, because they were very different hurricanes with very different risks. So, you know, what caused all the problem in Houston was that the storm just stalled over downtown and rained for a few days, and that caused a ton of flooding. And that's one particular type of risk. Whereas the big problem and what did most of the damage with Irma was it had a nasty hurricane front, a tidal front that, you know, put 6 to 10 feet of extra water over the Keys, which pretty much destroyed the Keys. So an early warning system has to give you enough specific detail so that you know what the actual risk is. And an early warning system has to be clear, and so that everybody knows what the warning is and what to do with it. I'm not quite sure that run like hell is the clearest instruction in the world. Should I run backwards? Should I run forward? Should I run to high ground? Should I get my swimming gear on? What should I actually be doing? And this doesn't give me a lot of details about what action I should be taking. And then what response should I take to the warning? You know, how should I prepare myself to react to this early warning signal? You know, you can't even have a beer because all the beers are being hung up here. So, so there's not a lot that an early warning system like this is going to allow us to do, but it did let us see what a good early warning system might look like. So let's look at another early warning system from Irma, but from the point of view of what are our goals? Why have an early warning system at all? So the first reason to have an early warning system is to take timely action. So when I was driving into Florida and I heard the early warning system, you know, I was probably 25 at the time, so you know, probably not the, you know, probably more adventuresome than I should be, so I ignored it for 8 hours. But I still had 5 hours to find a Marriott and get a good hotel room. So there was plenty of time to consider my plan, consider my action, and take the right steps. And obviously the people leaving the hurricane are taking the right step, and I'm not quite sure what the people going the other way are doing. They're probably more like me, ignoring it for the first 8 hours. The second reason we want an early warning system is to be proactive. And so we can see a couple boarding in southern Florida so that it can survive the winds. This won't help them with the floodwaters, but this will certainly help them with the winds. So we want an early warning system that is going to let us be proactive. You know, in the SaaS world, reaching out a day before an unhappy customer is going to renew is probably not enough time to be proactive. So we definitely want to avoid churn. You know, probably not my best image here, but you know, we want an early warning system that is going to let us batten everything down and you know, make sure that what can be saved is saved. And the other thing what we're looking for with an early warning system is teamwork. So sometimes, especially in a high touch model, when a customer, when you get an early warning system that a customer is at risk, it might take some effort on the customer success team. It might take some effort on the implementation team. It might take a little bit of effort from sales, maybe some effort from product development to make that customer happy. So you know, we're definitely looking for an early warning system that's going to pull people together to solve the problems. Okay, so what are the elements of an early warning system that you might build for a hurricane once more? Okay, so the first one is clear signals. Hurricane warning is in effect. The very last warning that the National Weather Service in the States put out before Irma hit land was said, we're concerned if you don't leave southern Florida that you won't be able to survive. That was a clear warning. So you need a clear signal. And then you need a specific risk. You're going to do different things for a Category 1 storm. So if you have a Category 1 storm, you're going to board everything up. You're going to take everything off your lawns and put them into the basement. But you're not necessarily going to get out of town. But if you've got a Category 4 or Category 5 coming where you've got flood risk and wind damage risk and tidal risk, then you're probably going to get out of town. So the specific risk and the degree of risk is really important in putting together an early warning system for your customers. Okay, constant communication, both internally and with your customer, is a key when the early warning system sends a signal out. I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like Governor Scott here was everywhere for about 5 days. And even if I wasn't watching the news, I could see him somewhere. And so he was constantly getting out and communicating with everyone, getting a common message around, and establishing himself as the authority. It was his message that mattered the most. Okay, and another element is to have a standard playbook put in place before the warning system goes off. And so, here's one way to prepare yourself if you're in a state that is vulnerable to hurricanes, how to prepare, having flashlights and maps and water and insurance policies around. But it's really good to know what actions to take before the warning goes off, because things move too fast after the warning's gone. Okay, so that's the early warning system analogy in the hurricane. So let's take a look at the elements of that in a little more detail and see how it applies to customer success. And I'm just going to talk to Mathilde here for 1 second. Good. Okay. So there are 4 elements of an early warning system, and I actually got this from a research paper on how to design a early warning system for hurricanes, tsunamis, and earthquakes. So the first element in the top left is to really understand your risks. So this is where it's going to be very different for every SaaS business, because the risks in your business are going to be unique to your business and mostly different from other businesses. So is it a risk that they're submitting a lot of tickets? For some businesses, that's a signal that they're unhappy. For some businesses, that's a signal that they're happy and engaged and working to get the right solution for themselves. So so understanding what the risks are in your business. Obviously, one of the most important risks to learn about is how do they respond to variations in value that they're getting. from your system. So, when you're first building an early warning system, you might want, 5 types of risks that you're managing and monitoring. And maybe over the next year, 18 months, that might grow from 5 to 25 as you get more experience and see what works and what doesn't work. Okay, once you know what the risks are, what leads to churn, what leads to success, what's a predictor of unhappiness and lack of satisfaction, what's a predictor of low value, then you need to define the signals that are going to tell you that risk is happening. So in the case of the hurricane, the signals that are really the most important is the pressure inside the eye of the hurricane. That's what they use to make their predictions and to grade the hurricane. So they have to have an accurate way to detect the pressure inside the eye of the hurricane. So a couple of the guys girls from the Air Force get to fly a plane right into the eye of the hurricane, because they have to find out exactly what the pressure is. So you have to define those signals, and once you have the signals that are going to tell you, how a customer is doing. A very common signal in the SaaS world is number of logins or the number of active users. Is that going up? Is that going down? Is it more this week than last week? Those are common signals to look for. Once you know what the signals are, then you need a monitoring system, and the monitoring system will pick up all of the data and then tell you which signals are going off right now. So you might get a signal from a customer where their activity level on your product has gone up, but the value metrics that you're using are starting to go down, and that might be a mild warning a long time ahead of time, or everybody just may go red. Everybody's usage is going down, the value is going down, the number of tickets is going down, so they don't seem to care as much as they used to, and those may all be signals that something serious is happening with that customer. And then, so once you know what the risks are, once you're monitoring monitoring your data, picking out the signals that matter to you, then you have to know what actions to take in the face of that signal. And without an action plan in place, the signals really don't matter, because signals don't create value. They don't do anything. It's the actions that you take that create value and produce results. And so you really have to define, what actions am I going to take when the number of active users is down 20%? What does that mean? I'm going to offer more training? Does that mean I'm going to go on site? What are the actions you're going to take when you get that signal? Okay, so a really important point when designing an early warning system for your customer success team and your SaaS business is to start small. And here at Amity, we've worked with 200, 250 customers around the world, and we've seen people come in with very, very complex and thought out and detailed early warning systems that they want to put in place. They put them in place, and then 3 months later, they throw it all away and start really simple. And it's because usually when you start, you don't know all of the elements of your early warning system, so you don't know what the actual risks are. So what ends up happening is if you do a lot, you end up with a lot of signals that are telling you the same risk, and with no differentiation and action between those signals. So the best way to do this is start with a small number of risks, a small number of signals, and a small number of actions, and then track your progress with that over a period of time. And then as you see new risks, as you identify new ways of responding to risks and the signals that come with them, then your set of risks that you're managing and the actions you can take will grow over time, and then the new ones will be the most effective ones. Okay, another key element of putting an early warning system together is to define your signals by the lifecycle stage. And in a typical SaaS lifecycle where you're landing the customer, launching them, they're starting to adopt your product, you're starting to expand what they buy from you, and then renewal. At each stage in that process, the risks are going to be very different, and the set of signals you listen to will be very different in the actions you take. So if you have a trial-based land selling strategy, you might have 14 days, and you're going to need signals that can identify risks really early in the process, because you only have 14 days to work with that customer, to have their attention. Whereas if you're in the launch period, if you're doing an implementation, then they might not even be using your product yet. So that kind of signal won't work in launch. The types of signals you may want to pay attention to in the launch phase are more operational signals that implementation is going over time, or that they're struggling with one part of their role in the implementation process. And so it's much more of an operational process, whereas during adoption and expansion, actual usage of your product, actual value received, they're going to be the types of signals that you want to get there. So there is going to be no universal set of signals, and it is going to vary by lifecycle stage. Okay, so I think this is probably the most important slide today. Is start with the actions that you're going to take, and then look for the signals that are going to tell you when to take that action, because it's the actions that are going to make the difference. It's the action that you take is going to turn an unhappy customer around. It's going to accelerate a late implementation, and so what you're looking for is to take the right action at the right time, and you're looking for the signals that are going to best let you do that. So here you want to identify what challenges are the customers facing, how are you going to impact that challenge, and then how you're going to know that that challenge is in place. Okay, so then once you know what the actions you want to take are, then you want to start defining your signals. This is where things can get a little mathy, because you want to get your signals right. And so the first thing to consider are the source of the signal, the types of sources you have for signals. So a few sources are business outcomes. Business outcomes are the KPIs you're using to measure the value they're getting from by using your product. And if you sell a PBX system, maybe it's the number of minutes they're using every day, or if you're selling a number of seats, it's the active users versus the seats that they're using, those kinds of measures. Adoption is both, are they busy, are they using your product, and are they getting more sophisticated in the use of the product? Are they following a journey that you'd like them to follow? And so you might have a measure that says number of logins per user is greater than X, or the week-over-week usage of a key feature is up 10%, or they're at 80% of their licenses. Those kinds of signals to let you know what's happening with adoption. And then delivery and operational signals. Those are typically project management signals. Are they onboarding in time? Are they getting trained on time? Are they being responsive to your requests to them? Those kinds of signals. And then later on in the relationship, customer feedback. Is their NPS score going up? Are there more detractors this month than there were the previous month? Or is this particular user now a detractor after being a promoter for the previous 8 months? Something like that. And then relationship signals. Did a key executive leave the company or leave the project? Those are the kinds of signals that you'll want to be listening for, to get an early warning, that something's going wrong. Okay. An important thing to keep in mind when building your early warning system, designing your early warning system, is sometimes the people working with that account know better than your algorithms. And so for some of the metrics, you just want to allow for a manual override. So the CSM can say, nope, this account is happy. I know that the VP of operations left, but they're promoting Dave to that role, and we've got a good relationship with Dave. He's comfortable with our product, and so even though you've got a negative signal, you also have tacit information from your team that everything's actually okay. And it can easily go the other way as well. You can know that, hey, they're using the product every day, but they've started to lay people off, and so the CSM just knows that the business isn't going as well as they hoped, and that puts the contract at risk. So it's really important not to lose all of that brain power that you have in your CSM team, and capture the signals that you get from them. Okay, then you want to weigh out the particular signals that you're getting. Not every signal is going to be as important as every other signal. So if you're putting together a particular type of health score, you may want to give more weight to the business value or the outcome signals, and a little less weight to the usage signals, and less weight to the relationship signals. That'll all depend on your business, but not all signals are created equal, and you'll definitely want to weigh some of the signals over other signals. And this can vary. This weighting can vary by life cycle stage. This can vary by the product that they're using. So if you have a version of your product that is more operational than strategic, then maybe the usage is just as important as the outcomes. If they're in the rollout phase, then outcomes and usage will probably not be valuable. They'll have a very low weight, whereas the operational data will have a higher weight. And this can also vary by segment and by industry. We know in our business that B2B business with a large dollar value will have a certain rate of progress, whereas B2B business with a low average selling price will have a different rate of progress in the first 6 months. And we have to adjust our health score weights to absorb that kind of knowledge. Okay, another key activity is to share your signals and your health scores around the team and around the company, and with your customers. This is not something that you want to keep a secret. So you definitely want to give your customers report cards, and you can ask them, I can see the needles in the yellow on this particular metric. How can we get that up to the high greens? What do you need us to do to be able to do that? By sharing your health signals and your health scores with your customer, it's a great way of demonstrating the value that you're providing for them as well. So this is really critical information, both internally, where you might want to roll your health scores and your signals up by industry or by product or by lifecycle stage, so that your executive team and other key people in your company can see what's happening in great detail. So don't keep this information to yourself. It's really, really valuable. And just by sharing the information and finding out what the customer thinks you need to do to address it, just improve the overall health of the relationship. Okay, and the last step in putting together an early warning system, at least for today's presentation, is to build a command center. So, we're talking, some of the things we've talked about are understanding your risks, understanding the sources of data that you're going to use, the types of signals that you're going to use, how you're going to weight those signals into particular health scores, what actions you're going to take based on those signals and health scores. So at this point, and then splitting that up by life cycle stage or by industry or by region or by product, it's starting to get pretty complex. And you definitely want to give yourself a command center that lets you see what's happening with your customers, set goals on the various signals that you're tracking for them, and then put a plan in place, a customer success plan in place to assess the progress towards those goals, and to know when you aren't progressing towards those goals. So it's once you have a lot of high value information about your customers, you're going to want to implement a command center to stay on top of it all. And of course, that's the business that Amity is in. So at that point, you might want to take a look at our command center and see if it's a fit for your business. Okay, so that is a quick walkthrough on building a early warning system, both for hurricanes and for your customer base. Any questions that we can answer today? Okay, if you have any questions, just use the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so just give everyone a quick overview of the Amity system. So when we work with a customer success team, it's not unusual for them to have a command center that looks something like this. It's on a whiteboard. The whiteboard is filled with hand-drawn graphics, hand-drawn lists, and little sticky notes. And typically, there's a few sticky notes on the floor because that glue doesn't stay on the whiteboard very often, very long. And the data that our customers are working with, they're probably working with anywhere from 3 to 12 different data sources that they're trying to pull together. And so the first step in building a command center is to pull all of that data together. And that lets your team focus on renewals and referrals and scalability and reducing churn rather than pulling all of that data together. Okay, and the key features in the Amity product suite is data integration, pulling all that data together, feeding it into our analytics engine so that you get the signals that you need. We call those insights, but those are the signals we were talking about. Are the number of tickets going up or down? Is usage accelerating or decelerating? And then feeding that into our manual and automatic workflows so that you can have automatic email campaigns or manual playbooks for managing onboarding based on the data that you're getting. We have great lifecycle management so that you can see health and revenue by lifecycle stage and how that's changing over time, and then all the reporting that you're going to need. Okay. So those are the key elements of the Amity platform. Any questions?
Yeah, I think we have some questions. We have some question already. So Scott is asking, what's the best way to keep customer health scores objective? Some folks have a tendency to rate their high scores because it's a reflection of how they're doing their job.
So the best way to keep your health score objective is to explicitly define the risks that you're trying to manage with the health score and explicitly define the actions that you want to take. And then the health score should tell you, should be able to translate, when this risk happens, this is the action we're going to take. And that should, if you keep that action focused, and that should help you keep the health scores objective.
Great. Another question here is, I think I heard manual override. Is that correct? And if so, how can we manually override certain figures and metrics?
There's definitely a manual override is important. Where you can manually override and where you can't manually override will depend on the types of metrics that you're looking at. So it can be just a manual insight where you just you say that this customer is having this problem and without any data behind that, just because there may be figures that you can override if you have a method for knowing that data better than the data source that you're getting that data from, but typically you're not overriding the data itself. You're overriding the interpretation of that data, and you might not even be doing an override. You may be providing an alternative interpretation of the same data, just because you're in there working with the customer and
Awesome. Another question linked to overrides here is it a good idea to record those instances and include them officially in your employee onboarding playbook?
Absolutely. Certainly every employee will need to know what actions to take and what's going to signal that action. So you absolutely should be training everybody during the onboarding phase. And a standardized set of actions and risks and signals really accelerates the onboarding. it can really cut the onboarding time in half.
Awesome. A question here is, how do we check the warning signals for more than 200 customers per CSM?
Well, self-serving answer is a command center tool like Amity, a customer success automation tool like Amity, can really make that a lot simpler to do. You can also do it with a spreadsheet like Excel or a Google Sheet, producing those automatically. But that's definitely slower. But yeah, if it's 200, 300, 400 customers and the health scores can change, you're definitely going to have to put some method of filtering what's important and what's not important for your CSMs.
Great. Should health scores not be part of the metrics a CSM measures for the success of his job?
Read that again. I just want to make sure I understood it.
So the question here is whether or not health scores should be metrics that measure the success of a customer success manager doing his job.
Yeah, so you can definitely see if the health scores of an aggregate group of customers tells you how well a customer success manager is doing at particular aspects of their job, absolutely. But I think it's a mistake to design the health score to measure the effectiveness of the customer success manager. You want to define the health score to help you make the customer successful, and then measure the customer success to measure the effectiveness of your team.
Great. Question from Scott here is, usage is such a hard metric to evaluate since each client may have different needs for using the software. In that case, how do you benchmark all level set usage metrics so that the numbers can be compared across the client base?
Okay, well, we could do a whole webinar answering that. That particular question it is tricky. So my first answer to that would be start small and iterate, and then benchmarks are definitely one way of doing it, where you're comparing company's position in terms of quartiles or quintiles in a particular segment or for a particular product or a particular use case. All of that, and also using trending information. So even though company A and company B may have very different usage patterns, knowing how they each changed, their moving average for the last 7 days versus the previous 7 days, you can definitely use trending metrics like that to see how they're doing.
Great. Another question here is, how do we check customer health? What parameters should you consider broadly?
Yeah, so again, this is going to be vary by business and by maturity stage of your customer, but the rough buckets are business outcomes. Are they getting the value that they're paying for? That's probably the most important type of usage to metric to use. Then activity and engagement. Are they working with you? Are they cooperating with you? Are they using the product? Is that going up or is that going down? Operational data like project management is rolling out of a new feature. Is that on time, behind time? How often have you been late delivering something to this customer? Those are all things that can give you insight into the customer health.
Great, thanks. Danielle here has a question about Amity. Wondering if Amity offers any tools that work to help create customer success metrics, stages from scratch for a startup company, and she's the only CSM in her team.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Amity does, and we have startup package for startups that we'd be very happy to show you and talk about how that can help you. Just drop us an email on the website. We'll reach right back out to you.
Awesome. Another question here is, we're a startup. How can I measure the performance of our CS team? Can renewals and churns be the right indicator?
Yeah, that's a great question because so there's a few different things to pull apart there. The first one is health scores and success signals. They don't actually measure the effectiveness of your team per se. What they do is they measure the effectiveness of your process, and it's the rule of thumb is fix the process before you fix the people. Especially if you're a startup, all of your processes are going to be new and are going to be evolving and doing new things this quarter that you weren't doing last quarter. That's just the nature of being a startup. So that that's the first thing. And the second thing is you may want to look for leading indicators like usage trends. If you have metrics that let you assess the value the customers are receiving, those are the type of leading indicators that you want to manage as a startup. And then you can also use things like CSAT and NPS surveys to measure the overall health of a portfolio of customers too.
Awesome. Why don't we take one more question before we wrap up?
Sure.
So question here is, should the actions that you take after you receive a signal be different for high touch and low touch and high value, low value customers? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, if it's a high touch customer, then you might get on the phone with them. You may have a meeting with them. You may have an online meeting with them. But by definition, if it's a low touch customer, you may, the only option you may have is to send them an email or a video or something that's going to help them move forward. So absolutely, the type of customer and your customer success strategy for that customer will be very different from high touch to low touch.
Awesome. We just have a couple of questions about when the next session will be. First of all, thank you everyone for attending. We host webinars every 2 weeks, so you'll receive, along with the recording, an invitation to sign up for the next webinar we're doing, and it's going to be about adoption. But yeah, so you'll get the recording within a couple of days by Friday. So yeah, thanks so much for being here with us today, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Keep an eye on your inbox to receive the recording, and don't hesitate to share with your team and anyone that you know in customer success who might find it interesting. And Paul, thanks so much for taking the time. Awesome session. So
thanks, Mathilde. Thanks everyone for coming out. And sometimes when you get off a session like this, that question will come to you that you really want the answer to. Just drop us an email or contact us on Twitter. We'd be happy to follow up with an answer. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.